Today, I want to talk about one of the best methods in statistics that's used for predicting future performance based on past historical performance. And that is Monte Carlo simulation. So, if we look at an equity curve like this, which, by the way, this is my portfolio that I personally trade on the SPY. And since I'm sharing a strategy and an idea every month for this year, you'll be getting 12 of the strategies that I trade in my personal portfolio. So this is the equity curve for that portfolio, and this is the list of trades. And if we look at this equity curve, it is going up from the bottom left all the way to the top right. But in order for this to happen, the list of trades has to be in a specific order, meaning generally the losers have to be randomly dispersed, which is ideally kind of what you want in a trading system. And assuming that the edge of all of these individual strategies continues to exist, then we can expect future performance to be similar to prior performance. However, what we don't know is the order in which trades are going to occur. So let's say we have a very simplistic trading strategy that, for the sake of this example, only has 10 trades in the backtest. I know that's not statistically relevant, but let's just run with it for a simple example. Let's say 8 of those 10 trades are winners and 2 of those 10 trades are losers, and they specifically happen in the order of 4 winners, then a loser, then 4 more winners and a loser. So then what you have at that point is an equity curve that goes up for 4 trades, then it has a dip, a drawdown from this loser, then it goes up again for 4 more trades because of the 4 winners, and then the last trade in your backtest is a loser, creating a dip. And you can expect, generally, this is a performing strategy as long as the edge that this strategy is based on continues to be present. What you don't know is whether future performance is going to match this exact order, and in the reality, your future performance is not likely to match the exact order that they happen in the backtest. So, for example, you could in the future have a bunch of losers, or just in this case, 2 losers starting out before you start having winners. And so one of the most important things in terms of position sizing is to make sure you are position sized to account for the maximum likely drawdown of this strategy. And that's where Monte Carlo comes in. So what I've shown you here is the historical backtest result of a hypothetical strategy. And then I've shown you a version where we randomized the order of those trades. And Monte Carlo simulation is something that is often used in order to get a more accurate view of likely future performance by generating some number of randomizations of the historical data. So in this spreadsheet, we are generating 10,000 randomizations. And if you're a member of the community, you can find it in Trading System Tools and then the Monte Carlo simulator right here. But the way it works is you take a trading platform that can export trade data, and then you drop it in one of these tabs. So this is for multi-walk. You just copy the list of trades, paste it in. This is for TradeStation. You can actually just copy the entire performance summary and paste it in, and it will grab the list of trades out of this section here. And then for TradingView, you just go to the list of trades, go over here, and then download the data as XLSX. It's going to download an Excel sheet that has several tabs, and what you want to do is grab the tab called Trades List, and then you want to paste it into here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to click this Load Trades Trading View, assuming you got it from TradingView, and it'll import the list of trades that you pasted here and populate it over here. And then you'll see the long trades, the short trades, and then it's got a section for all trades. And then what it's going to do is, well, firstly, before you do that, go over to this table here, and then you want to put some amount of starting equity. So in this case, I put 7,500, and then you put the symbol, and then you want to put the maximum drawdown threshold you're willing to accept. So in this case, I'm only willing to accept a 15% maximum drawdown based on the initial equity, which means that the account size is considered blown if it drops to $63.75 in this case, given a $7,500 starting equity. But after you do that, what you can do is you can click this Run Monte Carlo button. Before I click it, you see this table here, and the 7,500, the base starting equity, whenever you click Run Monte Carlo, it's going to put that over here as the lowest starting equity. And then it's going to show several versions where you have higher numbers than that starting equity. And then it's going to show you, after you click the Run Monte Carlo, the risk of ruin, which is basically the percent chance in all the 10,000 randomizations, or rather how many of those 10,000 randomizations hit this 63.75. It'll also show you the medium drawdown percentage of all those 10,000 randomizations. And then it'll grab 95% of them and say, what was the worst drawdown of 95% of those 10,000 randomizations? And that can be used to give you an idea of what your likely max drawdown is going to be if that was your starting equity. And then, of course, you can see the median profit. I think this is annual median profit, and then median return annually, return to drawdown ratio, and probability of making money in a single year, average monthly profit, and then, of course, the return to drawdown ratio of longs versus shorts over here. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Run Monte Carlo button. And whenever you do, you're going to see this running script, and then you're going to see something pop up in the bottom right where it's going to show you some percentages. And then here you'll see that the table now updates. And even though we haven't changed any of the settings from the default I had here, you'll see some of the numbers change. That's because, again, it's doing 10,000 simulations. And so every time it does that, every time you click this Run Monte Carlo, it's going to create 10,000 simulations that might be different than the previous 10,000 that you generated. But essentially, what this allows you to do is say, okay, if I'm willing to accept a 15% overall max drawdown, then I probably want to have a starting equity where 95% of those simulations has around 15% or less. So in this case, I would want to fund the account with at least 93.75, and on average, based on those 10,000 simulations, that should yield a 25% annual return. And one thing that you can also use this for is position sizing. And so you'll see here that as the account grows, if you were to keep your position size the same, the drawdown of that 95% confidence, 95% of those 10,000 simulations would have a lower max drawdown based on the starting equity. But at the same time, your median return per year would also start to drop. And so if you had a $25,000 account, or rather $22,500 account, and you traded the strategy without ever increasing your position size, you can expect only about a 6.5% maximum drawdown, but your median return would be about 10.43%. And so if your threshold, which I don't recommend, if you're starting out, you probably actually can't handle 15%. If you have multiple income streams and you've been doing this for a while, then you can probably handle between 10, maybe as high as 20, depending on how many multiple income streams you have. But the longer you've been doing it and the more income streams that you have, then the more likely it is that you can handle a higher drawdown threshold in your actual trading account. And so here in this case, if let's say you had 11,250, which would yield about a 20% annual return, then every 11,250 in the account, you could increase the position size by 1 and be confident with about 95% accuracy that your max drawdown is going to be around 12 to 13%. And so that's how Monte Carlo simulation works. The other thing that this can be used for, so I mentioned that I put the entire portfolio in here. This is typically what it's used for. You can use it for a single strategy. And if you're going to use it for a single strategy, then that's where this goal seek 10% likely comes from. So if you have a single strategy and you're like, well, I want to figure out how much equity to allocate to that single strategy, and specifically you would like that strategy to have a risk of ruin of 10%. So if this wasn't a portfolio, if this was just one strategy and we loaded the trades in here, I would probably set a base starting equity size according to the instrument I'm trading. So like the margin requirements, as well as the size of the average move, or rather size of a tick move, based on how long I'm going to hold, or the average hold time is. You play around with the numbers, but essentially what you can do, if you're not really sure, you put some value like 10,000 in here, and then what you can do then is you can hit this goal seek 10%, and it's going to just decrease the value of the numbers until you reach 10%. So just as an example, if I was to put, let's see here. So this brings a risk of ruin about 4%. We want to get to, let's say we start it at, well, actually we can start at 7,500. So if we want to find, so again, I don't recommend doing this for the entire portfolio. But if we just click this button right now, what it's going to do is first going to check 7,500. Then it's going to say, did that number get us a risk of ruin of 10%? And if the answer is no, then it's going to try a lower number. You see right here that the number has dropped, but so has our risk, or risk of ruin has now gone up. And what it's going to do is it's going to keep dropping this base starting equity and then doing another 10,000 simulations and keep going until it finds a starting equity of roughly 10%. That way, if you're like, this is just one strategy in my portfolio and I want to make sure that I allocate an amount of money to that strategy only, so that the chance of the count equity, or rather the amount of equity allocated to that strategy, only has a 10% chance of dropping below a certain number. So in this case, you'll see that if we are only willing to trade a strategy where the max drawdown threshold reaches 15% of the base starting equity, then we can goal seek to get to 10%, which basically means that the chance of blowing the account, or rather not blowing, but rather the account reaching this number or below is 10%. So for a single strategy, that's useful. If you just want to plug one strategy in, not the whole portfolio, and then just goal seek until you've found the starting equity that you need to give you only a 10% chance of reaching your like floor for what you're willing to, or your floor for when you need to stop trading a strategy. So hopefully that makes sense. That's more for if you're not really sure how to initially size things into a portfolio of strategies, and you want to just pick some numbers. I don't really want to go into too much detail on how to pick initial numbers, but this is basically how I do it. If I'm like, okay, I need to size all these different trading strategies in my portfolio that trade a bunch of different instruments. How do I put them all in portfolio, even though all the strategies might be trading different position sizes, because it can be difficult to just plug that whole portfolio system into here. Which again, assuming that you plug in a portfolio of 20 strategies, each trading different position sizes, then it can be a little bit confusing. And so what I like to do is I like to take each individual one, set a max drawdown threshold for each individual strategy, find the 10% risk of ruin for each individual strategy, and then take all those strategies and put them into a portfolio, and then plug the portfolio list of trades into here. So essentially I'm doing this twice. So once for each individual strategy, I find the risk of ruin 10%, and then I figure out the position sizing and the amount of equity to allocate per position size to each strategy, and then I put all those into a portfolio, and then I plug portfolio in here, and then check the maximum drawdown for the portfolio here. So hopefully that made some sort of sense. I know that was probably a little bit confusing, but this is supposed to be a beginner series on algo trading, so I don't want to talk about how to create strategies for completely different instruments that have different margin requirements, different dollar gain or loss per move, and how to put them all together. But this is kind of a preview of how I personally would do that. But hopefully this makes sense. If you got lost in the second part, don't worry. As long as you understand what Monte Carlo simulation is and why it's useful, then you got the general gist of this video, and you captured what was important. So thank you for watching. Hopefully this helps you improve your account management and position sizing moving forward. If you have any questions about it, please message me in the community. I will be happy to help you with anything in regards to live trading and real money, because if you don't get this right, you can make some very, very bad mistakes.